我找doctor mấy gì dù cho doctor mấy gì là hát gì cứ mấy hạt chính phủ ta của họ hạt tôi thấy rằng nếu thấy mấy chuyện chơi của tôi ha mình chỉ luôn thấy rồi mấy thứ làm thứ gì luôn nó chỉ bảo ta của bây giờ hạt tôi là chờ đến mấy lúc sáng là mấy lúc sáng nhá cho họ biết tôi này nó kia nhà một nhà kia sáng nhà một nhà kia bù nhà một nhà chú kia tàu giờ giờ của hạt tôi là chẳng là của tây dạng thôi rồi giờ lúc chơi mấy lúc rủ vâng chỉ ở sau thì một tàu ý dạng có mong rong rồi bé cho lên số tu dạng có mong nói giờ bé lúc xóa bé tôi này lúc xóa giờ ý dạng cứ cho lên số tu chơi xí nếu ý dạng cứ mong về mong rủ hay mong phơi khí lúc cái ngầu lên giờ lúc xóa mà qua chỉ dễ sinh lòng nhưng khá tàu cho你拿的你拆plan là sự mua bán vấn đề chứ nếu lúc số tôi nên giờ ý dạng cứ người tàu đi từ lúc sáng giờ ta biết sĩ biết lúc số hạ biết lúc trong cho lịch từ nó kể cũng xây tàu lịch từ nếu cũng bán tàu lịch từ một cái càng xa giờ ta biết muaอย่างnó biếtอย่างcó mong rong nó sĩ một chỗ khó chỉ rong sự là họ lúc sáng lúc tệ lúc giá nhỏ sai chỉ tàu lúc tệ nếu có một bệnh sự chỉ thấy mình trong ba tệ cứ số lại cô sẽ lúa chủ trọ giờ nó bây giờ chủ chỉ sao nó càng bé họ có mong nó chỉ tàng là sự bé chủ sao nó càng bé mong cả bằng lúa cứ cố gắng trong cái nào cũng gì cả bằng lúa nó giờ有中国路有灵活之路cũng chính là bây giờ nó cho lên số tự nhiên tao cả bằng lúa nó rộng tức là cho lúa cho cứ chỉ tao nó chỉ cho của ba mình chỉ 有中国路有灵活之路才到的 in English You can take a wrong step and you can take your step back. But if you misspeak, you can't take your words back. The title video của cho Dictumdose bây giờ học bao nhiêu nó. Của mình chỉ cho là chỉ chơi, this is I want to prove a point. In the video I said, "Na chú tụi bao cookie rồi, này nhở." Thì lúc đó you hà rong hà thổi you bóc từ. Ta chỉ thổi you hà tàng nó mà. Cháu luôn này có sáng của cháu luôn mà nó chẳng là yên chỉ luôn lên rồi. Có giờ ha chó lúa lo cho chú tụi bao cái số lúa chó lúa là chỉ lúa lên rồi,但是有个出一个作用给有找干出lúa了，只我来讲只出来的，你别讲lúa还不如说能整给我们的。Our human voice is an extremely powerful instrument. As mentioned previously, it is one that can calm an infant in distress with a simple lullaby. It is also one that can start a war. Yet many people would say that despite having such power when they speak, somehow nobody listens. Somehow our voices that initially is extremely loud, immediately after birth suddenly becomes quiet, and not often used when it matters the most. My mom shared with me a time when coins and money kept disappearing from my dad's pockets. He would hang his pants on a chair just high enough for curious kids to access. She wasn't sure who was taking them or if they simply just fell out of the pocket, of how carelessly they were hung. So one day she decided to pay close attention to figure out what was happening. I think she was hoping to see my dad just throw his pants on the chair and walk away and see the coins roll out. But no, instead, she noticed a little mouse who would quickly pick both pockets and walk away. That little mouse was me. My mom asked me, "Mi veng? Lên tìm một nhà sinh cho con này con." And she said, my response to her was, "Ô nà, tôi giờ vang chỉ cho được cho cô." I guess at that time I wasn't wrong, and my mom couldn't disagree, because I walked away with pockets full of coins. My mom also shared with me that when I was 4 years old, I asked my dad a rather interesting question. I asked him, I said, "Pa, liệu nó có tổ nó kia có bao cảm của có cho keys?" That means, "Dad, when you die, can I have your set of keys?" There's a famous quote by George Bernard Shaw that I really love and I want to share with you all. The quote is, "We don't stop playing because we grow old because we stop playing." You want to say the moon again, you shall need to tell it all. Bé chỉ ô xí cho họ bé lâu lợ cho họ bé cho cái ô xí chế. We'll let that sink in for a little bit. This year I will be turning 38 years old. And according to my parents, I'm of prime age, the age where I'm supposed to be the most wise. And I like to believe that, but my kids, they beg to differ. They recommended me to close my TikTok account. Even though my name is Calvin Ling for Young, they should be calling me Dad, but they call me cringe and sus. Like the quote, I try to stay young and I play around a little bit. I walked up to my son one day and I said to him, "Hey fam." And he turned over like an owl. You know, the owls, they just, only the head turned. And he looked at me. And I thought I was doing well. So I proceeded. I said to my son, "What you think of my drippy sweater? You catching me in 4K, no cap?" My son quickly turned from an owl into a cheetah, grabbed his iPad and left the room. God is good. My wife and I have been blessed with 4 beautiful children, and I've had the privilege of seeing them grow from birth to now my oldest, who is 13 years old. One thing for sure that was and still is common for my kids till this day are questions. At every car ride, if they're not on their iPads, they are on my nerves. The classic question, are we there yet? How many more minutes? The questions usually don't stop, but as much as I would want to drive in silence and peace, I find myself always answering their questions. Thinking about this, I'm reminded of why we as adults began to feel stagnant and lack intellectual growth. We grow old because we don't play anymore. We don't ask questions out of curiosity anymore. I've been observing my kids and also self-reflecting. And here's what I noticed about our developmental history with regards to asking questions. Around 3 to 6 years old as kids will ask their caregivers and adults for help indirectly. They'll say things like, "I'm sad, I'm hungry, I need to go pee." But as they grow older to age 7 to 12, they begin to ask questions more directly. "Can you help me with this? Can you open this for me? What's 10 times 10? Or like my 11-year-old son would say, "Bruh, how are babies made?" So questions are much more direct at that age. In the 13 to early adulthood, we begin to notice a decrease in questions. Because somehow at this age, everyone is an expert. There's an increase of the usage of, I know. I know this because I used to know. Pneumonia, 包了吗? 你喂我的讲咯，哪个包嘛？包嘛. Somehow we're all experts at this age. We begin to think that we know it all. And some of us may feel insecure and embarrassed to ask questions because we fear that someone might judge us for asking a stupid question. Our most powerful instrument, most powerful tool, one that can play many notes, one that serves many purposes, suddenly becomes dull and out of tune. Today, I want to remind us about the power we were all born with, our voice, and our ability to communicate. I encourage you all to embrace your inner child and continue asking these few questions. The first question that I encourage you to ask, and one that I think Dr. Maisi already alluded to, is, who am I? Who am I? For me, this question is what drives me every day to do what I do. It is what motivates me to get up out of the bed every single morning. I am a second-generation Hmong American, which means that my parents are refugees and immigrated here to the US. I was born here. I am a son of Hmong refugees who escaped genocide following the Vietnam War for their alliance with the US in a secret operation known as the Secret War. At this time, I do want to recognize our parents, the soldiers, the nurses, pilots and medics, and all those who fought for our freedom. Could I please ask all of you to stand at this time? Give a big round of applause, please. I know many of you are the reason why we're here today. Bộ chữ học kế cho biết tàu biết trả lời mua lên nụ rong bộ. Yếm mua miết trong lên số tu miết được làm từ rù. biết sao lại tao tốt lại doctor degree lịch tệ. Và mình số có thể trong nó. It is because of their strength, their courage, their bravery, and resilient spirits that we, all of us, have a chance at this thing called life. Because of them, I had the opportunity to learn and educate myself and build a life for a brighter future. We cannot forget their stories. The stories of our ancestors. Because if we forget their stories, then we're like this lost bat. Lost bat in this Hmong folklore that I learned from my parents in Gilao as well. So there's a story about a lost bat. And it felt really scared and afraid, and it wanted to find its family. So this bat goes on this journey in search of his family. And it comes upon this group of mice. And the bat flies to the group of mice and says, "Oh, you're my family. Look, I have the same nose as you. You have the same nose as me. We must be family." The group of mice says to the bat, "No, cái yêu kia là chứ yêu. Cái lúc tông chữ dùng lại biết lú. Ta chỉ có một tí, biết chú một tí. Cái nhà chứ tông nó." So the bat, disappointed, flies off. Confused, unsure what to do, the bat stumbles upon a flock of birds. And the bat says, "Oh, that must be my family. Because look, they have wings and I have wings." The bat "I'm home. Hey, look, I'm home. You must be my family." The birds look at the bat and says, "No, this is not your family. You may have wings like us. We have feathers. You don't." Disappointed, the bat flies off. It found this dark cave, and it thought to itself, "I might as well go and hide in this cave so that no one gets to see me." And it was home. So we must not forget our roots. Know your roots and use them as a preface to your story. When I was in elementary school, I remember going to open houses and award ceremonies. The ceremonies, like certificate, perfect attendance, honor roll. And after receiving an award, some of the teachers would walk around with their microphone and would ask the question, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" Each student had their moments. One would say, "I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer. I want to be an engineer." My niece's response was, "I want to be a goat feeder." While this is a good question to help our students start thinking about their potential careers, I prefer to change that question to a different one. One that I prefer to ask, that is, what will you contribute to improve society or the world? And here's the reason why I like this question more. When you think about this question here, what will you do to improve society or the world? That question usually does not have a destination in some ways. When one person says, "I want to be a doctor," that has a destination. You must say no. You know how pa you know to doctor, so you get to know you thought like that go ya doctor like that you know you want lunch. That you know how pa that go some cure cancer no yo. Go some cure cancer go sa bang go to nemo get kang sha and if that is the goal and that's the path that they set to pursue, the purpose and goal that they pursue, then perhaps down the road, becoming a doctor and becoming a scientist is a byproduct of that purpose. Go to me on any so sad than you or lunch when you name. She at the old doctor, thought like doctor in research about lunch. Does she knew how pa you some bank cure cancer or bank the kill you know. Gelushia can you move to shotgun then look at this and go doctor unless she was a scientist. So I prefer to ask that question. So I want to ask you too, is what is your goal? What is your reason? What is your purpose? When you're driven by your purpose and continue to do meaningful work, these titles, they're there to help you open doors and untangle obstacles, which allows you to keep moving forward to fulfill your goals. I really like this saying. The moment I heard my dad share this, I said, wow, I need to remember these words. Nhau lo hao zhong ha lo hao lu, but I'm going to my seat for high hollow that when I get a seat, I want to use that. Now that you have a seat at the table, what will you do with that opportunity? Will you challenge the status quo? Will you speak and give voice to the underserved and underprivileged communities? Will you use your position to fight for justice? And then last but certainly not least, the question I encourage you to ask yourself is, it's an easy one. What's next? Now that you've graduated and completed this chapter in your life, you might be wondering what's next. A quote by Benjamin E. Mays, which I really like as well, I want to share with you all. He says, "The tragedy of life is often not in our failure, but rather in our complacency. Not in our doing too much, but rather in our doing too little. Not in our living above our ability, but rather in our living below our capacities." What's how the monk in Haleno? Kakutu Shacham Plefing Tao, Chiyahatape or Chitao. Tashi Yalun de, gets our Shaja Bitu King, Gu or Jabe Jalitunge. Nikuchi Yahata, you want our cloud? Tashi Yawachitao. Chiyahata Be Toshaku in Chantao the Bilu Bingsu. Tashi Ya, the Be or Ning, Getlo the Bilushu. There's another monk proverb that I really like as well. Another monk proverb that speaks to this. The monk proverb is, the best fruits is always high up and money is always out of your way. Don't live below your capacities, but strive to improve your abilities. Don't grab the low-hanging fruits, but put in the effort to reach the fruits at the top. Success is like a piece of paper blowing in the wind. Each time you try to grab it, the wind carries it a few steps away from you. Like the saying goes, you're better off aiming high and missing than aiming low and hitting it. Life is a mystery. You can have all these questions over and over again. You ask your questions, but I want to close with a story that ironically also involves asking a question. I also follow a person on social media, and he talks about this story about the Buddha and the beggar, which I think is really relevant to my C's journey. There was a homeless man. To survive, he's been gathering food, and one day he noticed that his food kept disappearing. Sounds rather familiar to the story about coins earlier, right? One day he caught the mouse that kept stealing his food, and he asked the mouse, "Why are you stealing from me? I'm a homeless man. You can steal from richer people who has more than me." The mouse then told the homeless man, "It's in your destiny. It is in your destiny that you can only have 8 items in your possession, no matter how much you beg, no matter how much you gather. This is all that you'll be able to have." The homeless man in shock asked the mouse, "Why is that my destiny?" And the mouse said, "I don't know. You should try and ask the Buddha." That's it. What do you mean, Buddha? I was also with Wendy earlier over there, turning up, and I cleaned up a little bit by residue here. The homeless man then goes on his journey to find the Buddha. It gets late during the journey, and he ends up at a wealthy family's house. He asked if he can stay the night, and they graciously let him in. The family asked him, "Young man, why are you traveling so late?" He tells the family, "I have a question for the Buddha, and tomorrow I'll be on my way." The family then says, "Can we give you a question to ask the Buddha too? We have a 16-year-old daughter who can't speak. We just want to know what we need to do to help her speak." The next morning, the homeless man thanks the family for shelter, and then he tells them that he'll ask the Buddha their question. As he continues on this journey, he comes upon a sea of mountains that he has to cross. He climbs up one mountain and he meets a wizard. And the wizard decides to use his staff to take the young man in himself, and they fly across the sea of mountains. The wizard asks the young man, "Where are you going? And why are you deciding to cross these mountains?" The man replied, "I'm going to ask the Buddha a question about my destiny." The wizard, with curiosity and eagerness, then says, "Can I please give you a question to ask the Buddha as well? I've been trying to go to heaven for over 1,000 years, and according to my teachings, I should be able to go to heaven now. Can you please ask the Buddha what I have to do to get to heaven?" "Of course," the man replies. I'll ask your question for you. As the man continues on his journey, he runs into his last obstacle, a wide river that he simply cannot cross. Fortunately, he meets a giant turtle who decides to take him across the river. As they're crossing the river, the turtle asks the man, "Where are you going?" The man responds, "I'm going to see the Buddha. I'm going to ask him a question about my destiny." The turtle then says, "Can you please ask a question for me too? I've been trying to become a dragon for over 500 years, and according to my teachings, I should have become a dragon by now. Can you please ask the Buddha what I have to do to become a dragon?" The young man thanks the turtle for taking him across the river and says, "I'll ask your question for you." When the homeless man finally meets the Buddha, he noticed a crowd of people already waiting to speak with the Buddha. The Buddha tells everyone that he will only answer 3 questions per person. So he thinks carefully. The turtle's been living for 500 years trying to become a dragon. This wizard has been living for over 1,000 years trying to get to heaven. And that young girl who is going to have to live her whole life being unable to speak. He then looks at himself and he says, "I'm just a homeless beggar. I can just go back home and continue begging." As he looks at everyone else's problems, his problem suddenly seems very small. Feeling empathic for the turtle, the wizard, and the young girl, he decides to ask all of their questions instead. He asked the Buddha, and the Buddha carefully answered. The turtle is unwilling to leave his shell. As long as he's unwilling to leave the comfort of his shell, he will never become a dragon. The wizard always carries his staff and never puts it down. It acts as an anchor, keeping him from heaven. And as for the girl, she'll be able to speak when she meets her soulmate. The homeless man bowed to the Buddha and went on his journey back home. He reunites with the turtle and he tells the turtle, "Hey, I got it. All you have to do is take off your shell and you will become a dragon." The turtle then takes off his shell, and inside his shell were priceless pearls. Pearls that can't be found anywhere else but only in the deepest oceans. And he hands this to the homeless man. And he tells him, "Thank you. I no longer need this because now I'm a dragon." And he flies away. The homeless man reunites with the wizard at the top of the mountain and says, "Hey, I got your answer. You just have to put down your staff." The wizard puts down his staff and ascends off to heaven. The young man now has wealth from the turtle and power from the wizard's staff. He goes back to the family that gave him shelter and he tells them that the Buddha said, your daughter will be able to speak when she meets her soulmate." And it was at that moment that the daughter came downstairs and said, "Hey, is that the man that was here last week?" The young girl and the once homeless man had found their soulmate. You see, to transform and to be the best versions of ourselves, we must be willing to put others before us. We often get caught up in our selfish desires and we find ourselves taking in more so than we give. This story tells us that we have to give things in order to get some things in return. If we want to become a dragon, we must be willing to leave behind what is familiar, what is comfortable and safe. For example, moving away to a place like Utah, and undergoing a doctorate degree in the midst of a pandemic when everyone is afraid, scared, uncertain. And I'm sure the rigors of your program was painful, lonely, and at times debilitating. But to grow and fly beyond our limits, we have to take risks and leave our comfort zone just like the turtle did. Even before receiving your degree, I'm sure the process itself was transformative. I know it's hard to let go of things, worldly things that we think give us power, things that anchor us. But the treasures we seek is not in this world, for worldly materials are temporary. The real treasure is in the kingdom of heaven. Once we let go of the anchor and fixate our eyes on the risen one, you will then ascend to heaven like the wizard. Don't lose faith, believe and you will achieve. This story also tells us about the power of hope. Despite not having answers for over 500 years or 1,000 years for that matter, hope kept the turtle and the wizard asking questions. And one day, the perseverance led to the answer that they longed for. If the homeless man took the mouse's words without question and had no hope of finding the Buddha, the homeless man would still remain homeless. When there's no hope, the end of the road is despair. So hold on to hope, even in the darkest moments of your life. Dr. Maisi, I'm sure your journey was very much like the journey of this homeless man. You may have found yourself asking your own questions. Should I quit? Should I just go back home? Go back to the place that's comfortable? And I'm sure that you encountered many people who also had questions for you along the way. I'm sure there are many times where your future seemed uncertain, not knowing if your hard efforts would ever pay off, and perhaps also having to make tough decisions, self-sacrificing decisions. I'm willing to also bet that despite the uncertainties, there were also moments when you least expected, you inherited valuable pearls and a powerful staff. Handshakes, thank yous, hugs, words of encouragement, and moments of laughter and crying on each other's shoulders. Well, let me just say that so you have to allow them to get which thought they have. What they get which are among you that there's the jury clear, you the long jobs. When you thought, then now my chick challenge, you jump at what they have. You're not when you walk at the last one. The ship in Molunning what they get to look at Donma is very similar to Gig and Hawk and there. You just go out there again, the yard. You're the Josha, do need to go the long. Nì trâu khí, nì cháu con lông lúa yếu lù hang lù rồng, nì cháu con lông yếu tại ban chỉ rồng. Thằng nì tới con lông rồng lỡ, rồng sau lỡ kia nì yếu một sau nì tới con tới lông. Sau nì tới trả la trả sự, được gia cho con nì lù chăng. Nì chế tôn nền yếu tàu nọ yếu chỉ chạy lăng chừng khe. Cái gần đó yếu nì trâu sắc cỡ. Cho sáng trả để cái chân chế được bao nhiêu người, nếu sáng để đi thái của thao chút cái chân nghề, thầu cơ này có một cái chân chế, thầu cơ này cái cơ có tao mong cho họ dùng, nếu mong sau này để cái cần đó, được cha cho buồn nhiều lúc chăng, phong trào chữ lùi những khai chữ bé ta cho rằng, những cái cho rằng từ nó cái nhận được những yếu tao nhận được, giờ tôi nói đó mới xì, ni cho không có ni cho nó, ni cho anh để luôn lên rồi, ni cho tao nhận, ni bảo số, ni ban chế cho, ni luôn nên, ni phải kiếm bảo số, trả lời luôn chủ nó. Dr. Maisi, your willingness and passion to help others are the keys to unlocking your greatest potential. As you start this new chapter of your story, continue to ask questions. Harvest the crops from the seeds that you have previously sown. Keep your eyes open for opportunities and be open to new experiences. These will be the keys you need to unlock and open doors, not just for you, but also those behind you as well. Your family, kids, and the next generation. Dr. Maisi, congratulations. May God bless you and yours. Congrats.